Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 1, Winterfell. This video is part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Game of Thrones. I have to start with a spoiler warning for Game of Thrones up to Season 8, Episode 1. If you haven't seen up to this point, you will not want to watch this video, otherwise some things will be spoiled for you. So, the season premiere after 2 years of waiting of Game of Thrones is finally here. And, you know, if you've watched my channel before, you've watched any of my reviews before, you know that I was, to say the least, unhappy with the last 3 episodes of Season 7. In fact, what I said exactly was they had dug themselves in such a deep hole by the end of Season 7 that there's no possible way that Season 8 could possibly be good after the rut that they let themselves in with those final 3 episodes, which to say, an understatement to say, I did not like. Now, that being said, more recently I have said that I had signs of hope for the next season, the directors being one of them, because they got all really good classic Game of Thrones directors to come and direct the episodes this year, and also the fact that they did take 2 years to do this season does make me think that they took their time, whereas I think Season 7 was a bit rushed. So I feel like maybe the possibility is there that they took their time to plot out the season properly. And so after having watched the season, because I came in with a somewhat open mind, I wasn't like, oh, this is definitely going to suck. And I've said this before, I don't want it to suck. If I'm proven wrong, I would love it. So I came in with a somewhat open mind, and I have to say, I think this episode did the best job that they possibly could, considering how badly Season 7 ended. So I am very optimistic, but I want to temper that optimism a bit, because Season 7, the first 4 episodes were great and then went to shit, so I can't be complacent and be like, oh, this season's going to be amazing based off of 1 episode, because it could always turn to shit later on. But this episode does make me extremely optimistic for the ending. It does, because what I said specifically, I did a discussion video recently with my brother Abkin Tomka over on his channel, and what I said specifically, what they needed to do in order to make Season 8 good was to focus on the characters and develop the character stories, because the character stories has always been a very strong staple of the show from the beginning, and that's one of the main reasons why I did not like the end of Season 7 is because I felt like they lost the characters, that it became all about the plot, and it was just shuffling characters from place to place, and you had no really attachment or no development to them. They just felt like, you know, pieces on a chessboard moving around without any depth to them. And so this episode in particular was all about focusing on character work. So this episode did exactly what I thought the show needed to do in order to recover from Season 7. That is, go back to the strong, drawn-out character pieces that's made the show so great from the very beginning. And also, like, each season has a tradition of the season premiere, the first episode of the season, of being the slow-paced setup episode. But that being said, I'd actually say that this is one of the better ones. This is one of the better season premieres, because usually, honestly, the season premieres aren't that great, because not only are they setting up for the season, a lot of the premieres actually have a lot of fat, a lot of filler, a lot of unnecessary scenes that are just there to kind of take up space. Like Season 7 had this stupid scene with Ed Sheeran, which didn't need to be there. But this episode had every single scene needed to be there. Every single scene was important. Every single scene was developing a character, or building up a situation, or setting the stage, or giving you these well-earned reunions, or characters meeting up who haven't met each other for years. That they deserved, that the fans deserve to see, and that service the story, and service the show, and service the characters. So I was very impressed. So basically, I think this episode did everything it needed to do to recover from season 7. But that being said, there are still some plot holes or some potholes, some downfalls from season 7 that there's no way to recover from, that there are going to put a damper on the season, and we got a few in those episodes, so I did have a few issues with it, which there's probably nothing they could do about it because they already set it up in season 7. We didn't see Dr. Colossus, aka the Night King, in this episode, so that's another thing, because I thought he was extremely mishandled in season 7. So when we do see him again, it's going to be a real challenge for them to try to recover from that, because I think they made him a very two-dimensional, whereas season 5, season 6, I thought he was a very menacing, very interesting villain. Season 7, I thought he was a two-dimensional cartoon character who I didn't buy and take seriously anymore. So that is another huge pitfall that this show kind of just skipped over and didn't really address this episode. So that's another challenge. It's gonna have to wait and see how they handle this going forward. Anyway, let me get into some of the specifics of the episode. Let's start with the intro, because this is really interesting. I think my brother brought up the fact in one of his reviews that what are they going to do, because usually they show the map, they show all the different places, but this season's pretty much going to be very isolated. So he's like, what are they going to do? Just be like King's Landing, Winterfell, in the show. And it'll be a very quick intro. And I love how they actually addressed this. They came up with a totally new look. A totally new image for the intro, where it actually goes like inside the castles and looks around, and it starts, of course, with the hole in the wall that shows the White Walkers, and then it actually has like these blue tiles to show the White Walkers' progress. And we actually got to see the last Hearth in the intro, because that actually made an appearance in this episode. And so they show the blue tiles going up to the last Hearth, because that's where the White Walkers made it to in this episode. So that was really cool. I heard some people complain about this new intro, but I think it's necessary, because they can't do it the old way, because like my brother said, it would just be like very fast, like dun, 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 and were they gonna like float around King's Landing forever to draw it out? No, I think what they did here by actually going like inside the castles and seeing all the gears and seeing the crypts of Winterfell, that was great. That's exactly what they needed to do. Anyway, let's get into the episode proper, and I'm going to go by location. So I'm going to start with King's Landing, one of the sort of lesser locations. And that's another thing. When I did this discussion video with my brother on his channel, we talked about what is Cersei going to do? Is she going to just sit there in King's Landing in this episode and just be like, and that's basically what happened. That's kind of what I was expecting. I mean, it was a bit interesting how when Qyburn went up to her and it was like, oh, I got some bad news, the White Walkers made it past the wall, and she's like, good. That's a bit dumb of her. I mean, she thinks it's good because, the White Walkers can kill Daenerys, but then they're going to come for her next. I guess it just shows how stupid and short-sighted that she is. And then we get our first look at the Golden Company, and we see Euron arrive with the Golden Company. We're introduced to a new character, Captain Strickland, who calls everyone a slacker. A little Back to the Future reference there. or he helps, he injects children with the proto-molecule. A little Expanse reference there. Anyway, Strickland, whatever. Anyway, is a cool new character. And I like this sort of interaction, how Cersei was so disappointed that they didn't have elephants because they weren't in the budget. Come on, we're already spending all this money on dragons and White Walkers. You want to spend money on the elephants as well? No. But it's kind of like, it does seem impractical for the technology that they have in this era for them to take elephants all the way across the narrow sea. So I think she's being a bit unreasonable here. So maybe it's just showing how unreasonable she is. And I did like her interactions with Euron, because I kind of side with Euron in this, because I think he has a point. Because I said this before about how Euron's being kind of dumb, just taking Cersei at her word that she's going to marry him once the war is over. Yeah, once I don't need you anymore, I'm gonna give you what you want. Sure. I mean, it seemed obvious to me that she was just stringing him along, and it seemed like he was idiotic for going with this. So I think it actually makes a lot of sense for his character. Now, like, look, I did all these things for you. You know, I brought you justice for the people who killed your daughter. Brought you the Golden Company. I did all this stuff for you. And what have you done for me? Jack shit. And so it kind of makes sense that I think Cersei realized that. And so in order to string him along, that she knows that she still needs him. And that's why when she threatened to kill him, that's why he was just pfft, and that was correct of him. So I think she knew that she kind of had to give him a little something. But it was kind of interesting when he said, I'm going to put a prince in your belly. And she kind of gave him this fake, patronizing smile. It's like, huh. But as soon as he left the room, that look on Lena Headey's face, the way she performed this was absolutely amazing because it showed how actually broken up she was by the fact that Jaime left her. And she's still hurting from that because she already has a baby in her belly and it's Jaime's, and you can tell like when being reminded of that and that as she's being abandoned by him. That was really well performed. That was a good scene. I still don't know what Cersei's long-term plans are if the White Walkers actually win, but as I said, maybe she doesn't have any. And I don't know what's going to become, like, if she does give birth to the baby, could she, like, pretend that it's Euron's, like the same way she pretended Jaime's other children were Robert's? I don't know. Well, in the scenario that's never going to happen, but the scenario that she thinks is going to happen where she's going to win and become Queen of Westeros, she's probably going to kill Euron, so maybe she wouldn't even need to pretend they're his, but whatever. And it's kind of funny how when Euron brought up the Kingslayer, like that she slept with him, that she got pissed off and said, oh, you're going to risk your head. But I thought she was being open and honest about sleeping with Jaime now, because she said last season, like when the handmaiden came in and saw Jaime in bed, the bed together, she's like, who gives a fuck? I'm the queen. I can do whatever I want. So I thought that was her new attitude. So what does she care if Euron knows that she's sleeping with Jaime? Well, anyway, I don't know. So then we get the scene with Bronn. We have to have our token sort of prostitute scene. We see a lot of naked prostitutes having sex in a little sex position there. But I love how they kind of call out the sex position, because Bronn's like, would you shut the hell up about the dragons already? Which is kind of cool. In fact, I'm kind of surprised they did these kind of scenes, because it seemed like they were moving away from them and not really doing them as much anymore. But anyway, so Qyburn comes in and tells Bronn, we have all this money, we're going to give you all this gold, we're going to give you a castle, give you everything we promised, but you have to kill Jaime and Tyrion if either survive. Now, he didn't, because it's funny, he started out by saying it's not likely that they're going to survive the coming Battle of the North, but if they do, we're giving you all this gold to kill them. But what if they don't? If it's not likely they survive, then what? Are they just going to give Bronn the gold for free? Or for the prospect of trying to kill them? Or are they going to be like, actually they didn't survive, so let's take that gold back? Like, I don't know. I thought that was a bit vague on that. And, of course, the huge question is, would Bronn actually do it? Because Bronn's actually really close to both brothers. And I love how when Qyburn mentioned it, his first thing he said was, you're that fucking family. And I think he might look at it from the perspective of they have their own, like, that family's fucked up and they have their own internal issues. It has nothing to do with me. If she wants me to kill those guys, then whatever, I'll do whatever. Because this has always been a sort of issue with Bronn, because his main motivation has always been the money, the gold. But there's a few things, time to time, he does do things out of loyalty that maybe doesn't service his lust for money as much. Like I was just watching episode 4 of season 7 during the Dothraki battle, and he lost his bag of gold, where if he was really greedy he just would have just took it and ran off, but no, he actually left the gold behind in order to fight off Daenerys' dragons and to save Jaime's life. And there's other moments where Bronn has really shown affection for Tyrion. So it's an interesting quandary of will Bronn actually go through with it or not. But I also wonder, since, it could have just been they didn't have time to do the scene, but since Qyburn showed up and did this, told Bronn about it, but we didn't get a previous scene of Cersei telling Qyburn to do this. So what are the chances that Qyburn's just making this shit up and Cersei actually didn't order him to do it? He's just doing this on his own volition. Although I kind of doubt it. We do know that the actor who plays Bronn and the actor who plays Cersei apparently had a very bad breakup and they refused to be in scenes together. So that explains why Cersei didn't come to him personally. And maybe they just didn't have time to show Cersei telling Qyburn to do this. So maybe I'm just reading too much into this. But anyway, let's talk about Theon and Yara, because we get the scene, of course, before Euron goes to Cersei. He's taunting Yara just to establish that she's their captive, because we hadn't seen what actually become of her since she was taken captive. It kind of makes sense he's just wanting to taunt her. But then very quickly the Ironborn, Theon's Ironborn, just very quickly come in and just kill Euron's men like very easily, and very easily rescue her. And I know some people might say that was too easy. It was too quick. It was too simple, because I was really expecting like a long drawn out storyline about Theon trying to rescue Yara. It was quite surprising that it just happened in the first episode in like 5 minutes, 2 minutes, even that. But I will say, I'm actually happy about this. I like this. I actually like that they just got this over with and didn't drag it out for a long time. I actually think it would have been a bit of a distraction. It would have felt unnecessary or drawn out, and I wouldn't have been that interested in it. So I'm actually glad they just ripped off the Band-Aid and immediately. Some people may see it as anticlimactic, but I'm fine with that. I think the overall implications of the season is great to just get this over with. And of course it was cool how Yara headbutted Theon for abandoning her in the first place, but then reached out a helping hand for actually coming back for her. So that seems like really true to their characters, a really Ironborn thing to do. And plus, Euron mentioned, and this is something in the books, and Euron mentioned this when he was taunting Yara about how he'd ripped out the tongues of all his crew members. But it did make me think that it's probably a really stupid thing, because when Theon and his men came to kill them all, they weren't able to sound an alarm because I suppose they have a bell maybe they could ring that they didn't get to, but it would have been a lot easier if they were able to yell out and scream they're being attacked, but they weren't able to because they don't have tongues. It seems like there was an oversight on Euron's part. But anyway, so Yara says she's going to retake the Iron Islands and hold them for Daenerys in case she needs a place to retreat to. Which I wonder how much of that is just because she doesn't really care about Daenerys anymore and she just wants to go back to Iron Islands. And when Theon's like, "Whoa, what about Daenerys?" and she just threw that out there as an excuse. Well, this gives her a place to retreat to where the White Walkers can't get to. I don't think that will actually come into play this season. I don't see Daenerys retreating to the Iron Islands. I think this is a way to kind of just get Yara off of the show. You'd be like, nah, she's off, doing the Iron Islands. I don't really expect her to see her again until maybe the end, after everything's resolved, or towards, So I don't think I'll see her in a while. But it's interesting how Theon was like, he's all disappointed because he wanted to go up north. She's like, no, if you want to go up north, you go north. And it was a really, heartfelt, touching moment. It was kind of like at the end of season 7 where Jon Snow said, go be Greyjoy. And now it's like she's saying to him, go be a Stark. So it's that he still has that loyalty to the Starks. And I love how she respected that. So I thought that was pretty cool. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get into the main crux of the episode. Let's talk about the Winterfell storyline. So they kind of mirrored the first episode where they had the royal procession coming to Winterfell, and I love how they had that music, the same like the music of Robert arriving in the first episode, to sort of to evoke that feeling. And then it had like the kid come up and like not be able to see and have to run up in the tree, which is sort of reflective of Arya like trying to run around and see King Robert arriving. It was kind of cool. I liked it, although it also had this feeling of like all the Northerners being pissed off and not really wanting Daenerys there, which doesn't really go along with the Robert arriving thing, but whatever. Anyway, so I like the wonderment that it evoked. Well, like these weird, like unsullied, and the dragons flying. Of course, everyone was like completely freaked out about this. Like, I like how it showed. I think it was a good way to portray these sort of two worlds colliding ish situation. And then, of course, we get the Sansa greeting Daenerys when she arrives. Now, let me get into Sansa, because here's one of the things that kind of, I don't know, annoyed me a little bit about this episode, is that I think like it totally makes sense that Sansa and the Northern Lords would be weary of Daenerys, that they wouldn't really trust her, and they're not really that happy with Jon Snow giving up his crown. That I get, but I do wonder if perhaps they turned up that element a bit too much, like just a tad bit too much, just to create tension. I do feel like there's an element to that is kind of artificial, because they want to create tension within the episode. I mean, as I said, just part of it, because I do get the Northern Lords not being happy with all that's going on with Daenerys being their queen, but I think Sansa was being a bit obtuse. I think she was being, like, she took it to a level which I think was quite idiotic. And it was kind of funny when, I'll get more into Jon and Arya later, but it's kind of funny when Arya told Jon, oh, she's the smartest person I know. And she kind of said that in a way that meant she was backing her hatred towards Daenerys. And that annoyed me, because Arya's not that stupid. I think I can see Sansa. I can't even see Sansa being this stupid, honestly. And for her to say, "Oh, she's being smart," no, she's not. She's being stupid, because I think when Jon like lays it out, it's like it doesn't matter if I'm king or if she's king or what my title is. It makes no fucking difference, because the White Walkers are coming to kill us all. We'll worry about that shit later. Right now, we need to freaking not die. And I think anyone, I mean, as I said, I can understand trepidation, I can understand being weary, but you have to put those things aside. And I'm not saying a smart person would put those things aside. I'm saying someone who's not a total fucking moron would put those things aside. So for Sansa not being willing to put those things aside makes her a total fucking moron. And Arya's a moron as well for saying she's smart for doing that, because she's not smart. She's stupid. Like I said, I'm not expecting her to love Daenerys. I'm not expecting her to be, oh, my queen. I buy that she's trepidatious. I buy that she puts her at arm's length, but I don't buy how much she pushed back against this. I think she was being obtuse. I think she was being stupid. And I think this was done for story purposes to create tension. And this is an issue I have, this artificial inflating of tension. But on the other hand, there's another scene where Sansa is talking to Tyrion, and I love getting all the reunions. This is one thing I like about this episode. All these characters who should interact with each other in reunions that we got, and I think we needed that, and I think it was well deserved. And I loved that they actually had the scene with Sansa and Tyrion, and I thought their interactions were great. But when Tyrion brings up that, oh, Cersei's bringing Lannister troops up to the north, and Sansa's like, and you believed her. I used to think you were the cleverest man I knew. Saying that Tyrion was being really stupid, which Of course he is. I ranted about this in my review of the finale of season 7, that Tyrion, everyone, not just Tyrion, but everyone who agreed with Tyrion, was being the biggest morons in the world for thinking that Cersei would actually help them. And in fact, like, they fucked up so badly, and I don't want to rant about this again, but it's their fault that the Night King's coming south of the wall, because they had this whole plan was to get Cersei on board, and by doing that plan, they ended up giving the Night King the means to take down the wall. So I think, I was saying before, I think they all deserve to die because it's their own fault for being so stupid. And here we see that Sansa, where she should have been involved. Now, hasn't said she's being stupid about Daenerys, but at least she's like the only person who's not a total fucking moron when it comes to Cersei. So it makes me think that if she was there when Tyrion first came up with this plan, that she would have been the voice of reason, saying, "Hey, you guys are morons. Don't do this." But I watched this other review where someone said, "Oh, Sansa's really smart because she can see Cersei's lying." No, that doesn't make her smart. As I said, it just makes her not a total fucking moron. like Tyrion had been betrayed. And also, it's kind of a meta statement, I felt, when Sansa said, "I used to think you were the cleverest man I knew," because that's how I felt, and many viewers of the show felt, that Tyrion was such a clever, smart, portrayed as a very clever, smart man in the first 4 or 5 seasons, and then now he's being portrayed as a total fucking moron in the last season. So I thought it was kind of a meta. So I'm hoping that's acknowledging that Tyrion was being a moron in the previous season. Hopefully they're going to correct it and make it so he's not being such a moron anymore. I don't know. It's just the way I look at it. Now, speaking of Arya and Jon Snow, I like how Arya wasn't really there for that big, reunion or, the royal procession, whatever, when they arrived at Winterfell. She was just, like, in the crowd and just looking around. And so they reserved some of her reunions. Like, they showed her looking at Jon Snow and looking at Gendry and the Hound when they were returning, but she didn't actually interact with them until later, which I thought was a pretty smart decision, because you can't have everything happen all at once. And it sort of makes sense. And I like how we got the scene with Arya and Jon Snow, and they were sort of quipping at each other. I do wonder if Jon Snow realizes how deadly Arya is. I don't know if maybe, it could be like Sansa's told him off screen, so he's aware. I'm not sure. I wish that was made a bit more clear, but I do like, I like how, because their relationship is always portrayed as like the strongest, like Jon Snow was always closer to Arya than he was to any other Stark, and I like we actually see a bit of that there, and she, shows him Needle, which was the sword that he gave her, and that was the sword that she like clung onto through her own journeys. Like, I wish we got a bit more interactions with them and explaining their backstories, but I think it kind of makes sense for their characters that they wouldn't really get all mushy about it. And I don't know, I already talked about how I think Arya is being stupid here by backing Sansa. I think she should actually back Jon Snow and realize that he's smarter in this regard of wanting to help Daenerys. But we also get Arya reuniting with Gendry and the Hound. Now, I thought her interactions with the Hound was perfect, because they from someone who didn't know better, they would think that it was adversarial, that they're being hostile towards each other, but they're not. That's just how the Hound and Arya are. Like, they actually love each other, but they don't show it. They're not going to go out and hug each other like she would with Jon or whatever. They were just a lot more. I like how they're just like, "Oh, you left me for dead." She's like, "Yeah, I stole your money too," and he's just like, "Yeah, you're a cold-hearted bitch, but that's why you're still alive." And that carries a lot, that statement carries a lot of undertones, because when the Hound was with Arya, he was teaching her to be cold-hearted, because he said that her biggest flaw was that she cared too much and she wasn't cold enough. And so when he said that to her, he was actually paying her a huge compliment and actually kind of saying, well, isn't it such a good thing you actually took my teachings and you listened to me and you became such a cold-hearted bitch, which is what I was telling you to do, and that's why you're still alive. So I'm the reason you're still alive. So it's kind of a lot of undertones to that, which I absolutely loved. I hope we get more interactions between these two. I thought that brief little scene was perfect, and also her interaction with Gendry again, because she had a different way of interacting. It was about a lot more sort of caring, and the whole thing about. Now I heard some people thinking that this was a bit adversarial as well, but it totally wasn't. I did not get that at all. In fact, kind of got the impression they were flirting with each other, so it does make me think. I know a lot of people were saying it would be way too fan servicey if Arya and Gendry get together, but sometimes things that are quote unquote fan servicey work, and this I think would be one of those cases. Although I kind of think Gendry's not going to survive the Battle of Winterfell, but I don't know. You never know. We'll see. But I did like, because when he was saying stuff like, oh, my lady, and she's like, don't call me Lady Stark, and it's like, as you wish, as my lady pleases, because that's the exact callback to how things he said to her when he first found out, when they were traveling up with Euron up to they were traveling up to Winterfell to join the Night's Watch after trying to get away from King's Landing, and Gendry found out that Arya was a girl and was the Lady of Winterfell, so he's joking around, has my lady pleases, and they did the exact same thing here, which is a callback. And I love that, and I love Arya's interaction, because she realized that he was doing that, and you saw the relationship fitting right back together. And you can tell, like, Arya has this cold exterior, but you can tell that she still cares a lot for Gendry. So I would like to see this relationship develop more, honestly. And then, of course, she gives him like these schematics for a double-edged sword for him to create, and she's like, oh, that's going to be hard to create. I think it was a dragon glass sword, if I believe, because he made a whole dragon glass battle axe for the Hound. Now, I heard this theory out there that she's asking him to make this so she can use it to kill the white dragon. Now, I don't know if that theory is true or not. I think maybe it would just be easier if she's just using that just to kill whites and white walkers in general. And Gendry even points out, it's like, well, you already have a sword. And she's like, yeah, a dagger too. So it does seem like a bit overkill for her to have so many weapons. But if she uses this specifically to kill the Dragon White, it got me thinking. If this happened in the Battle of Winterfell, that Arya used that thing to kill the Dragon White, I think that would be the best thing ever. I think that is the one surefire way to redeem the show and make it good again, making me forget about season 7. I think the show would be awesome. I would forget all of my complaints I had about season 7 would be thrown out the window if Arya kills the White Dragon with. And now I know some people would be like, oh, that's so fan servicey. No, what's fan servicey is a fucking ice dragon. That's fan servicey. Getting rid of that would be eliminating the worst kind of fan service that ever existed ever. Like, I joked in between seasons that the best thing for the season to start is if the white dragon just died and fell off a cliff in between seasons and the season started. It's like, oh no, it's dead. But I mean, that's not going to happen. But what could happen if they get rid of that fucking fan servicey dragon as soon as possible, then I would love it. And if Arya was the one to do it, even better. And I don't think it would be too fan servicey, because we pretty much know, or at least suspect, that they're going to lose the Battle of Winterfell. So it would be one victory amongst a massive defeat. So that wouldn't be too, like, I am of the mind that a lot of these characters are going to die during the Battle of Winterfell. Because at the moment I was noticing there's so many characters, and that's why they had to take so much time to show all these characters. I wouldn't be surprised if half of them were dead after the Battle of Winterfell. So it's going to be a massive defeat. It's going to be depressing. It's going to be sorrowful. So having this one victory, I don't think would be too fan servicey. But that's just me. Anyway, let's move over and talk about Jon Snow and Daenerys. And it's interesting how Davos proposed marriage. It's like, what I'm proposing is a proposal, or whatever he said. That was interesting. I don't know it seems like they don't really have time for them to get married, but that was sort of an interesting way to resolve this whole thing about the Northerners not liking her. And I actually didn't mind their relationship, the way it's portrayed. I thought it was kind of dumb how Sansa was like, "Oh, did you trust? Do you do Daenerys? Did you make an alliance with Daenerys because to save the North, or because you love her?" And with Jon Snow, he just like looked solemn and didn't reply, but he should have been like, "It doesn't matter. That's what we need to do to save the North. My feelings for her are irrelevant," which they totally fucking are. I still think Sansa's being a fucking moron, but move past that. It doesn't matter if he did it because he's in love with her. It's a smart thing to do because they don't want to all fucking die. How can she not move past the point of you don't want to die? You don't want the Night King to win. Like nothing else, literally nothing else matters. And I'll touch on this more. But anyway, so we see Jon Snow riding a dragon, which I thought was great. And again, some people might have thought this is fan servicey because people have been saying forever Jon Snow's going to ride a dragon, and we see him riding Rhaegal. And now, this doesn't mean that he's going to be, quote-unquote, a dragon rider, necessarily. Maybe he was just going for a joy ride, and that's all we'll see. Or maybe it was setting up for him to be riding a dragon and become a dragon rider. I don't know, but I did think that was a really cool scene. I did really like this. Now, in the sort of after show thing, Dan and Dave were saying, well, this is obvious foreshadowing that Jon was a Targaryen because the dragons would only let Targaryens ride them. Which, I don't know if that's really been established to be the case, but whatever. In fact, they said that Jon was being a bit obtuse for not realizing this, but I don't know if I agree with that, but whatever. I think it was definitely... I hope it's not just feeding into that, though. I hope we do get follow-up to this Jon riding a dragon thing, and I thought that was really cool. A really nice way to show him hooking up. And now let me get into the whole Samwell Tarly thing. Now, this is where, when I talked at first about how I did have some issues with this episode, this is mainly where they came in when we get into Samwell and Bran. And this is, again, what I was talking about the hole in Season 7 being impossible to completely recover from. And I'm mainly talking about the whole thing about Jon is actually Aegon Targaryen, the king of Westeros. Whoa. Okay, so first we get Jorah and Daenerys going to Sam and thanking him for saving Jorah's life. Now, how did Daenerys know that Sam was there, but Jon didn't even know he was there? But, let's leave that aside. So anyway, they go to thank him, which I thought was pretty cool. And it's like, oh, you should give me a pardon because I stole these books and I stole the sword from my father. She's like, oh, what father? Randall Tarly? Oh, no. And so I like how Daenerys was like, didn't hide it, because I think that does like kind of a TV trope where she would just be like, oh, and not hide it, not say anything because she didn't want to tell him that she killed her father. But I like how she was just outright, yeah, I actually killed your father. And he's like, oh, fuck, that's too bad. Oh, well, at least my brother's still Lord of the thing. She's like, well, actually, killed him too. And I like how, and they talked about this in the after show too, and it makes sense. I like how the actor who played Samwell definitely portrayed like different reactions from the father and the brother. Like when it was the father, he was like, oh, that kind of sucks, but the guy's a dick anyway. But when it was the brother, he's like, hits him a lot harder, and he's like, fuck, that's my whole family's dead, and the person who killed him is right in front of me, and definitely too much for him to handle. So I liked that scene. I bought it, but I didn't like the follow-up to it. I did not like the scene where Samwell went to Jon Snow. Now, it was good getting the reunion to him, of these two finally meeting. And again, how did Jon not know he was in Winterfell until now? But leave that aside. Anyway, Samwell goes and says, "Oh, you're the Rhaegar Targaryen's your father, and Lyanna Stark's your mother, and you're the rightful king." Blah 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 blah. So this is getting back to my main issue, and plus, let me talk about Bran, because at the start of this episode, when Sansa's like, "Oh, welcome, Winterfell is yours, your grace," and she could tell there was tension between Sansa and Daenerys, and he was just like, "There's no time for this. The Night King has your dragons. They're past the wall. They're gonna come kill us. That's all that matters," and that's the right attitude to have. But why then is he contradicting himself later on? He's having a double standard here, because he's being like, "None of this king, queen, who gives a fuck? Night King's the only thing that matters," which is a smart attitude to have. But now he's like, "Well, Jon is the rightful king, and you have to tell him." And so Samwell goes and he's like, "Oh, Daenerys isn't the queen, you're the king. And if Daenerys, you're willing to set aside your crown for the greater good, would she be willing to do the same?" It seems like Bran's pushing for this. So why the fuck is he doing this? Why isn't he taking his own advice at the start of this episode when he says none of this shit matters? The Night King's coming to give us all. Who gives a fuck who the king of the Seven Kingdoms are, the queen? None of that shit matters. In fact, I ranted about this a lot in my season 7 review. Is the entire show from season 1 to season 2 to season 3 on all the way up to here was hammering in the point over and 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 over again that the line of succession is meaningless. It doesn't matter. It makes no difference whatsoever. I mean, it's proven when Robert came in and just killed off the Targaryens and he's the king. And now all of a sudden they're putting up their faith in the line of succession, meaning that Jon is the rightful king and not Daenerys. Who gives a fuck? None of this shit actually matters. And it's even more obtuse that the specific characters of Samwell and specifically Bran, who earlier in the episode says none of this shit matters, why not? Now, I thought of one excuse of how this could work, and that's if this was a Doctor Strange situation where Bran knows the outcome of the future, and he knows in order to get to the place where he knows they need to get in order to defeat the Night King, that Jon needs to be introduced that he's the king. He's doing this to set in events a series of events that will lead to them defeating the Night King. Now, if that's the case, then that's fine. But if that's not the case, then this is stupid. Then Bran's being a total fucking moron. He's being a hypocrite for being like, "Oh, the Night King's all that matters," and then all of a sudden it's "No, we have to tell Jon that he's the rightful king of Westeros." What fucking difference does that make? None. No, you know how I know it makes no difference? Because the show has been drilling this into my head that it makes no difference since the very first fucking episode, since Ned Stark lost his head, for caring about the line of succession, which is obviously meaningless. Sorry. So that, and in fact, when I first watched this scene, it actually didn't bother me that much, but the more I thought about it, the more it annoyed me how obtuse they were being. Now, the thing with Samwell, he brought up the fact that Daenerys killed his father and brother and how she doesn't deserve to be queen, and he does. I kind of buy this, but I kind of don't. I only have a slight issue because I was actually having a lot of internal arguments inside my head. So a lot of these comments you're probably going to put in the comment section about how it makes sense for Samwell to hate Daenerys. I've already had these. I know where you're coming from. I already made these own arguments to myself, internally, because it does make somewhat sense because she just killed his brother and father, and he was actually close to his brother. So it doesn't make sense that he wouldn't be very happy with her. But the whole thing about him trying to get Jon to supplant her to be the actual ruler because of this line of succession, which again, I I don't really buy that. I mean, I buy that he wouldn't be the happiest with her at the moment. But I think, like, Jon's reaction made sense when Samuel asked him, would you have done it? And he's like, well, I've killed people for betraying me before. And I went over this in season 7. I actually do think Daenerys was in the right for killing them, because what else is she supposed to do? He actively defied her. If she lets her role be challenged so blatantly and let someone get away with that, she's not going to be a ruler for very long. That's just a fact of life. That's just like it is. And Jon brought up the whole thing about how he's killed people like Janis Slint. If he'd just let him challenge him unburdened, then he wouldn't be a ruler at all. So it's just a fact of life of being a ruler. And so I like how Jon understood that, and I think Samwell's being a bit obtuse here. But again, I know the internal argument that I've already had these arguments with myself that he's probably not in the right mind because he's still grief-ridden. And so I can kind of get that, but I don't know. I still don't completely buy it. But anyway, yeah. So that's where the episode ends with them being like, oh, so now it's going to create a huge conflict between Jon and Daenerys, which I actually hope it doesn't, because again, like all this stuff is meaningless compared to the Night King. Everyone needs to band together to defeat the Night King. Nothing else matters. And as I said, it makes sense that there is some people be distracted by other shit, but I think they turned that knob up just a tad bit too much in this episode, and I think it was done artificially to create tension. Just my opinion. Now, finally, let me get into the last Hearth, which we actually see the last Hearth. I predicted we'd see this in season 6. We never saw it, so I was like, oh, we're never going to see it, but here we go. But when we do see it, everyone's dead there, and we see Tormund and Beric Dondarrion and their team meeting up with Dollish Ed and his team, which is a cool scene. I like that little reunion. And at the start of the episode, Jon mentioned how he was calling the Night's Watch back down because there's no point in them being guarding the wall since the White Walkers already broke through the wall, that they might as well come down and help, which makes a lot of sense. And it sort of sets up the stakes and the tension very well about how they have to sort of, it's a race. They need to get to Winterfell first to warn them that the White Walkers are coming before the White Walkers get there, or they're trying to beat them to it. Although, like, if Bran's able to see shit, he should know this already, but don't get me started on Bran's abilities, which are very inconsistent. But anyway, and it was such a effectively creepy scene. The way they pinned that young Umber up into the wall, and he started turning to white, started screaming, and they put the fire sword in him. That's villainy done right. Like, this is very ominous. So again, it does make me hopeful. So, my rating for Winterfell out of 10 is an 8. Extremely good. As I said, I think this is probably the best they could have done, considering what a rut they were left in season 7, because it was great character stories. We got a lot of great character interactions. We got all the reunions that we deserved. We got a lot of great setup, the ominous warnings. I love how they did the Theon and Yara thing. They got that over with so they can focus on what's important. And yeah, just a lot of great setup, great character interactions, and as I said, like, every single scene in this episode was meaningful. It served a purpose. There was no filler. There was no extra fat. It was all very good stuff. But season 7 did leave them in the rut, and there's some things there's just no getting around, such as the whole Sam and Bran being like, oh, you're the rightful king, when none of that shit actually matters. And of course, Sansa's being a bit obtuse, just to create tension when they don't really need to. So it's not a great episode, but still a really good one. Anyway, that is it for my review of Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 1, Winterfell. I will be back in just a few days to do a live stream with my brother Apkin Tomko, which will be over here on my channel. And what did we decide? Oh, Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which I believe is 7 p.m. West Coast in the U.S. And you can look up your times anywhere else in the world. The link to that event will be in the description below, so be sure to join us live as we get more into depth into this episode. Also, check out my channel as I continue to cover Game of Thrones, and I have a backlog of tons of Game of Thrones analysis videos you can check out, as well as I do videos on other shows like Star Trek, The Expanse, Lost, and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all that, and thanks a lot for watching.